Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host Mark Snyder. I'm going to dive right into some material from the Might of Thoughts book. Cognition deals with conscious or unconscious perception. We have both conscious thoughts and conscious feelings, of course, but also unconscious thoughts and feelings, which was something that was a mind opener to me when I first started reading this book. And unconscious thought processes will create unconscious feelings. So you've got unconscious feelings that you're not even aware of. So conscious or unconscious thoughts can make the psyche healthy or sick. And a lot of times there's a time lag, between the circumstances of our life as they manifest out of the thoughts. And again, these thoughts can be either conscious, the ones we're aware of, or unconscious thoughts that we're not even aware of. So that's part of the challenge, is really analyzing our thoughts, trying to be maybe aware of some of these feelings which just seem to come out of nowhere, and try to trace them back and find out where those thoughts originated, in the subconscious or in the unconscious, or were they conscious and they just went by so fast you didn't even pay any attention. The other thing is that we have selective perception. We filter things out. We don't want to think about those things. Maybe we've always been eating a little too much for the past 6 months or a year. And we don't want to think about that. We want to just keep doing that because that gives us a little temporary satisfaction. So we have a selective perception and a selective attentiveness, and this plays an important role. Sometimes there is an expectation of anxiety. We expect, when this happens, man, I'm going to be going through some difficult times. Really, you shouldn't be thinking that way. You should be thinking neutral, positive. Remember, neutral, positive. Not thinking anxiety, not a readiness to be anxious. Now, another thing that we learn from the Might of Thoughts book is that the disturbed human being tends to see things in a very limited framework. Have you ever noticed that when you're upset about something? All you can think about is this thing you're upset about. And you keep returning to it, and returning to it, and returning to it. You're making your psyche sick by doing that, by returning to the same negative thought, which was producing negative feelings, and it's going to be producing a negative habit. So how do we get out of those disturbed thoughts? We're in a very limited framework. Well, one of the things you can do is cover those meditative sentences. Billy has 77 of them. And just quoting those to yourself. Like, everything is achievable for me. I master whatever I accomplish. Everything is achievable for me. I master whatever I accomplish. So when you're having anxiety, if you say those words, it will change your thoughts. Everything is achievable for me. That doesn't mean just a little bit. That just doesn't mean some things. Everything is achievable for me. I master all that I accomplish. You see, that's a very reaffirming. There's two ideas there. Everything is achievable, and the idea of mastering things. If you can think about that, you can eliminate the anxiety. You can eliminate that repetitive, disturbed cycle that you've been going through. And the thoughts can be forced into a cycle where only negative themes are seen again and again. Like replaying something from a movie, like a really horrible scene where somebody gets killed or something. That's the way our thoughts work. We repeat. What you need to do is repeat things like the meditative sentences, like, I always remain relaxed and thereby gain might over myself. I always remain relaxed and thereby gain might over myself. I always remain relaxed, thereby gain might over myself. Then you can bring the thoughts back to neutral positive and get out of that cycle. Now, emotions are not to be equated with feelings. Emotions arise suddenly from some sort of internal or external situation. Emotions are hard to bring under control. Emotions exhibit also a strong state of excitation. We can get very excited from emotions, and the heart starts to beat, adrenaline starts to pump. You're experiencing an emotion. That wasn't a feeling necessarily. Feelings tend to grow slowly, and they come out of the thoughts. Thoughts and feelings can be very well guided. You can guide your thoughts, you can guide your feelings, but you can't guide your emotions. Emotions cannot be steered. Emotions are reflexive, they're spontaneous, they're manifestations. Feelings are formed slowly through your world of thoughts. And the good feelings lead to good thoughts lead to good feelings. Good feelings lead to good habits. And good habits lead to good circumstances. All the circumstances of your life, they arise out of your thoughts, conscious or unconscious thoughts. They determine and stimulate your pattern of feelings and much, much more. I just wanted to cover a few of those concepts. Now, one of the important things that we've been doing over the past few studies is we've been talking about creational natural laws, and I wanted to run through those quickly again. And the first creational natural law is love. It's one of the, I think, when you start to really wrap your mind around it, it's a challenging thing to understand completely. Because with love, you're dealing with understanding the oneness of all things. Because there's a fragment of you in everything that you're looking at, everything that exists out there. Remember, 46 trillion years ago, we all came from the same pea-sized band of energy, which has been expanding for 46 trillion years and has gone into all these different forms, planets and solar systems and people and trees, but there's still a fundamental oneness to all things. And that's really what we're dealing with here, a wisdom-conditioned love that recognizes the fundamental oneness of all things. When Billy was a very, very young boy, 3 years old or 4 years old, he went outside and, it was 3 or 4 in the morning and it was a May evening and he looked up at the beautiful starry sky. And he heard a voice in his head which said, "My life comes from the love of creation." Now, that voice may have came from the storage banks, from the universal storage banks. I don't know. Was it a telepathic message? I don't think so. Did it come from his predecessor personalities? Possibly. Because the next thing he says is, "Since ancient times, I've lived among the stars." So with Edward Albert Meyer, you're dealing with a very ancient spirit form, 9.6 billion years old. This man who lives in Switzerland, in a tiny mountain village called Hinterschmid-Ruti, is born every so many centuries. Sometimes there's thousands of years between his physical incarnations. But the extraterrestrials have tracked his lifetimes. And they even have tracked his lifetimes not only on the earth, but beyond the earth. And they know that he's been Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. And in each one of these lifetimes, he's been a teacher. And he's been a teacher before then. He's been their teacher before. And he has a group of people that work with him. They're called the FIGU, the Free Interest, FIGU, Free Community of Interest. They work there in the Semyase Silver Star Center. And other people come in and help Billy with his publications. He has over 40 books, thousands of booklets. And this information is truly mind-boggling. And it teaches us about these laws of nature. Not only is there the law of love, the incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation. You see, creation radiates love, but it's not a heavenly Father. It doesn't give you commands. It's a neutral, positive, spiritual energy. And it creates universes as a part of its own evolution. It creates also human spirit forms. And you have a spirit form that's much more ancient than you probably realize. Your spirit form resides in the roof of an area in your midbrain called the superior colliculus. It's called the wonder of all wonders. One of Billy's contacts, a woman named Semyase, said, every human has a spirit. It does not die, it does not sleep. It records everything that you do, all your thoughts, your impulsations, and it will tell you if your thinking is right or wrong if you've learned to pay attention to it. So your spirit form has a little gauge, so to speak, that will let you know when you're not thinking neutral positive. But you have to pay attention to it. The first creational natural law is love. It's the highest principle in all creation. Everything follows that principle in absolute logic, except man has the opportunity to turn away from love, even though the creation radiates love. Go out in the forest, go out in the woods, listen to the cicadas and the birds, listen to all the life. Go out in the morning, watch the sunrise, listen to the birds sing. Now, I really think people that are in an urban environment have a more of a difficult time. And this is related to overpopulation. It's related to the time in which we live. But take the time to look at the laws of nature. Another law is striving. We have to continue to work. We have to earn our living. We have to earn a keep. And if you strive, you can be happy. It's very difficult for a lazy person to be happy. Did you know that? It's one of the laws of striving. Your happiness is tied up in your being focused and striving to improve your thoughts. Have you evolved your consciousness today? Have you harmonized your personality today? Have you helped your fellow human being today? Are you functioning under the law of striving, under the law of love? What about the law of harmony? Harmony means you have to keep your thoughts in a neutral positive. If you don't, then you'll have these thoughts that produce anxiety and distress and worry. Those are three very important laws to live your life by. Well, before we get to the Plejaren form of democracy, I also wanted to also cover a couple of other things that I think are good for the overall view. And I'm going to have to step back in time again, as I do occasionally on this show, and I'm going to step back about 113,000 years ago. You know, there were civilizations on the earth 113,000 years ago, and there was a land called Hyperborea. And Hyperborea has always been associated with the land of Florida. But 113,000 years ago, Florida is at where the North Pole is now. And there was something different about our atmosphere, our angle towards the sun. I don't know all those details. But Hyperborea was an area of an eternal summer. It was the best climate on the planet. It was tremendous. All kinds of fruit trees, a wonderful place to be. Now, there was a guy who came here from a long, long way away from another star system. His name was Eris the Barbarian. He was the king of wisdom, but he didn't function under the law of harmony very much. He wasn't a spiritual man. He was a brutal man, and he was a leader of a group of people who came here from a place called Beta Centauri. Now, Beta Centauri you shouldn't confuse with Alpha Centauri. Alpha Centauri is a very close star system that consists of 3 stars, Alpha Centauri A, Alpha Centauri B, and Alpha Centauri C, which is also known as Proxima Centauri. By the way, Alpha Centauri B, they discovered an Earth-like planet around it 2 or 3 years ago. There was a big brouhaha about it, and then it went quiet. Isn't that interesting? They don't like you thinking about Earth-like planets out there. They don't want you to understand the bigger picture. And that's part of the secret dark order, is to keep you confused and in a state of unknowing. Well, the truth of the matter is there are human beings out there in our galaxy, in our universe, and they visited here. And I think that by and large the majority of them are probably pretty decent people. However, there are a few, like Eris the Barbarian, who came here from a place at a great distance. Beta Centauri is 350 light years away. And he came here with 200 leaders and sub-leaders. One of those sub-leaders was a man named Semyasa. Semyasa mated with an Eva, an Earth woman, a woman who was on the Earth, who was not as evolved as these extraterrestrials. Now, the offspring was named Adam, a giant by our standard. Over 10 feet tall. I think he was 12 feet tall. And not a person with a, today we produce people 8 feet tall occasionally, but it's usually because they have some kind of growth problem. And they're not proportional usually, and they usually don't live a long time. But these people were very healthy, and they were 12, 13, 14 feet tall. And such was Adam. And this is, according to my information, this is what the biblical Adam was based on. But Quetzal, I say Quetzal, because Semyasa, one of his later incarnations, was the man Quetzal, one of Billy's contacts. Semyasa wasn't he wasn't in line with Eris. This wasn't Eris's will. This was, Eris's did not want to mix with the native Earth people. And there's a whole slew of reasons for that, probably. And probably because part of it is genetics. And I won't go off on that tangent, but that could probably be a show in itself. But in any case, Quetzal, Semyasa, reaped the benefit or the trouble associated with that. And Eris continued his conquest. He conquered Hyperborea. His son Aaron conquered India and Pakistan. And the Hyperboreans, the people that were originally living there, they kind of escaped and went to other places. Now, one of the places that they went to is a place called Mount Shasta, because in Northern California, there was a small city in this mountain with 700 people, a blonde-haired people. They are the leftover descendants of a group of extraterrestrial humans that I just explained, who lived in Hyperborea. And you could see their golden-colored spacecraft come out of the eastern side of Mount Shasta, or possibly Mount Mammoth. And Jeff Rentz has a picture of some of those ships. These Hyperboreans carried beam weapons with them that they would sometimes use on Earth peoples who got too close. They also had a deep underground base near the Aleutian Islands. And the Hyperboreans have been on the Earth about 180,000 to 190,000 years. I think they left in 1995. Most of the extraterrestrials on Earth left in 1995. We don't know why. They had bases in Asia and North America. The Switzerland base had been here about 300 years, but they left. Something happened here on the Earth. We don't know yet. Now, the Hyperboreans had their own king of wisdom there, JHWH, who gave Enoch his great wisdom. And this king of wisdom also commissioned Noah to build the great ark. And I've talked about this before, but the story of Noah and ark have changed greatly over time. It happened, according to my information, 100,000 years ago, which is much longer ago than what the Bible says. And Noah, according to my information, his name was Nebuchadnezzar, and he was over 10 feet tall. And he was commissioned to build the ark by an extraterrestrial, a king of wisdom, not the quote-unquote God that's talked about in the Bible. And the events, again, took place about 100,000 years ago. The ark landed about 30 kilometers away from the summit of Mount Ararat. Otherwise, those large four-footed creatures could have never made it down the side of the hill. And Nebuchadnezzar maintained contact with an extraterrestrial named Zebulon, who was advised him to build the ark. And evidently, this flood, I believe, was also caused by the Destroyer comet, which we've talked about. There used to be a comet that would pass the Earth and cause all kinds of trouble in our history. And I just want to cover one more thing, and then I'll bring Nate on, and we'll talk a little about the Plejaren form of government and whatever else happens to come across our mind. But there also is another extraterrestrial group on the Earth, and they were called the Hasters, and they lived in a galaxy like 483 million light years from Earth. The Plejaren brought them here, and they created a large base, an undersea base in the North Sea. And these people were fairly sophisticated, about 1,120 years ahead of the people of the Earth. They were very ethical, and they had highly distinctive lifestyles. And they could tolerate the presence of Earth people for like 17 hours without losing control of themselves. So the Hasters picked out just a few people on Earth to have contact with, people of high ethical standards who wouldn't ever talk about having contact with them, which I think would be a very hard thing to do, which, by the way, I think me as a radio show host would probably be a bad choice, since I talk to people about this sort of thing all the time. But anyway, these Hasters were here on the Earth, and they could only tolerate our vibrations for about 17 hours. But they did have some contact with the people of the Earth. So anyway, I wanted to cover some of those topics quickly, and I always enjoy the history part of it as well as the Might of Thought stuff. And I'll bring Nate on, and welcome Nate to the show. How are you this evening, Nate?
I'm pretty good. How is the weather out there?
It's been beautiful all day and about 75, but I think some rain is moving in, unfortunately.
So you don't need rain right now, or you don't want rain?
We've had rain. I don't mind even a little more rain. Everything is so green. I just love it. And the lake is up to a good height, a good depth, I should say. So that's also nice too.
You sent me that video about where you live. I had watched it, and I thought that was really sweet. The old lady singing about her parents and living there.
Dog? Yeah, her dogs. She was singing about her dogs.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because when it rains there, do you get that wilderness smell? That fresh smell when rain comes down. Yeah, I miss that smell being in the city. That's why.
I can imagine. I would miss a lot of things if I was in the city. It would probably be a little crazy right now.
I don't. Once you've had the country, you don't want the city. If you're, once you've experienced both, and I think once you get to a certain level of evolution and development, and you kind of run away from the material side of things, that you want the quiet and peace that comes with living out in a place that isn't oversaturated with busy people.
Well, that's an interesting thought. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I think you do kind of want to run away from the material side of things. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like people oftentimes from like out in here, they'll come from out in Riverside, they'll come down into the inner cities and go to the clubs and other things like that, and because they say there's nothing to do out there, which I find ironic because many of the people that fill the clubs or something are from out there, so they could do their own club out there. It's just, but I find this like an allure of like television and an oversaturation of when commercials talk to you about how meaningless and how worthless your existence is unless you have the product that they're actually selling you, and this gets lodged into the subconscious at a very young age, especially when the number one babysitter in your life, was the TV.
Yeah.
So
that's a scary thought. What's also weird, these commercials, and this maybe is a weird thing to say, but I've noticed the commercials about sweets. All the different junk food that gets sold on TV. I just find that very strange.
Like McDonald's or like what?
Well, I was thinking more of chocolates and things like that I see suddenly coming on. Is
it a holiday season? Mother's Day is around the corner, right, or something like that?
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know what it is, but everything bad for you. All the drugs. The drug sales.
Oh, that's just bad. We shouldn't even do that here. And until we take our country back, if you will, that's not going to change.
I wonder if we're going to take our country back. I would like to think so.
I would like to think so in the way that, we're both optimistic, and I think that would be like, oh, there's a nice transition. We decide that, well, this just isn't what we should be doing, so let's not do it anymore. But what will probably happen is there'll be a great strife, another great war, and a lot of murdering and a lot of death, and then a huge fanatical uprising of different religious groups. And then slowly from that we'll trickle back down to a state of normalcy and calm and peace. And then from that we will only then will we start to really reflect on where we went wrong with our history. And then we'll start trying to, I guess, rebuild, but we'll give up our power once again to politicians and to leaders that are unwise and not really heed wisdom and stuff. That's just my prediction. I mean, prophecy. So if it happens, it wasn't from me. I was just regurgitating what I think is in the Hanok prophecies already.
Well, I've been reading something about the Plejaren form of democracy that comes from Contact 538. And there was a question that one of the readers gave to Billy about if he could. Billy asked Ptah about democracy and what kind of democracy that we should have. And this particular conversation took place on Saturday the 7th, April 2012. And it was, as it says here, true and direct democracy, as it is equally given among the Plejaren people, whereby such a democracy in this frame does not exist among terrestrial peoples, and neither will it exist for a long time. And there's a couple things about our democracy, our form of democracy, that is missing. One of the problems with our democracy here is that a true democracy must therefore be built up without Gewalt, which is, people acting horrifically, and coercion. So
I think that I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That I think that goes exactly where your and my hope is. Like, we'll just decide that this isn't the right way to do it, and enough of us will decide. And we're not going to go to war for these rich people anymore. We're not going to go to war for greed, and we're going to really think rationally through our actions towards war. And we're not going to be misled. And that's my hope. But that's what I think that they're saying there. Not through Gewalt. We're not gonna meet the right pathway with blowing up and murdering people, right?
Well, it's interesting you say war, because the Plejaren, around 52,000 years ago, finally were able to establish a true democracy, and thus lasting peace was created on the Plejaren worlds. And defining what this true democracy is challenging. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. They say that there's no despotism, no dictatorship, that when you have true democracy, that wars will go away, there will not be any tyranny, there won't be any, my understanding is, and someone correct me if they can find this, but we will not get true democracy from rulers, from parties. We shouldn't have political parties. There won't be parliaments, and we won't get democracy from our military or from our secret services either. And it says here that the people are fundamentally against war, unpeace, and unfreedom. And I think no matter what your particular affiliation, we could probably all agree on that. That we don't want war, we don't want to lose our freedoms, and so maybe there is hope. It's just a matter of finding the right way to make this work. And another thing, go ahead.
So, as a strategist, we need to bring it is our job to bring people's thinking up to the point of self-responsibility, where they no longer think in terms of let's get what we want through murder and mayhem and acts of Gewalt, right? Because if we hit that tipping point where things are just really, really bad, we want people to be able to make that decision to a true democracy or something like it, of their own free will, right? Versus if we get to that point in our current state where things get way too bad, then people are going to immediately go back to what they know. Do you understand?
I keep going back to the mental images I got recently from one of the meetings, the elections, and there were a group of people that were just destroying police cars. And I think eventually the riot police came in. But it was very odd to me to see that kind of behavior, thinking that that kind of behavior is going to accomplish anything. So I think that that's more the minority of people, that are doing these acts of Gewalt. But the other thing that's really bad about our elections is there's so much propaganda and vote buying and vote falsifications and coercions and
spinning of
go
words.
ahead.
The spinning of words and unknowledge, and the fact that they say you can't have knowledge. There can't be an overarching truth to things. And
that was going around a while. Wasn't there something on the internet with, you can't know anything? It's like, what?
Oh, there was. I don't know. It's just one of
there
the
was
things
some guy. I mean, a lot of kids were really getting behind that. Well, you can't know anything. I'm like, wait a minute. If you didn't know the English language, I couldn't even understand what you were saying or whatever. That doesn't make any sense. Didn't you drive
I'm sorry, Mark. I don't understand. I don't know.
But
what
we
you're
live.
talking about.
Have you heard the flat Earth people? There's a huge group of people that say, "Hey, the government's confusing me. The government's lying. The Earth is really flat." Whoa.
And that's a shame, because all forms of directing and guidance should be geared towards the truth, and should be geared towards understanding the truth, and a discovery and a rediscovery and a correction of our lives and the way we live towards the truth. And so it can't be a popularity game, and it can't be a game of murder or destruction or mayhem. It has to be, and it can't be a compulsory thing. It just has to be something that is recognized as knowledge, and we move forward that way. In a state of confusion, a crowd of people is easy to control. But if in a state of knowledge, it's very hard to control.
That's very true. That's very true. Now, another detail of what this Plejaren form of democracy is, which I honestly haven't completely wrapped my mind around yet. The people are not just forced into a yes-no type of situation, but there's the possibility for people to express their opinion. I don't know exactly how they do that, but people should be allowed to express their opinion and not be forced into just a yes-no, for or against kind of thing. So they should be allowed to express their opinions. Now, so this is part of this Plejaren democracy. Now, exactly how they manage this, I think it is also related to the fact that they have telepathy, which we really don't have yet. But go ahead.
So, a little bit more on that is the Plejarens 50,000 years ago, approximately. That was the last war fought on their planet, and so from that time they've had peace. So their calendar actually has started from that point. But as recently as a little less than 2,000 years ago, they started a new calendar, and this has to do with their governance, and which they have put themselves under the guidance of what they call the High Council. And the High Council is a half physical, half spiritual life forms that exist in the Andromeda system, and they put themselves under their rulership. But you have to understand, when I say rulership, it's like maybe a wise man will not force you into doing what's right, but only suggest that you don't do or you do something when it comes to an action or a thought.
I didn't know that they changed their calendar. That's quite interesting. Do you have any more details on that? That's fascinating to me.
I will try to find. I don't have it right offhand, but I will try to find that contact report that is in.
That's quite interesting. That as a whole culture, they would recognize that this was kind of a new beginning for them, right? I mean,
yeah.
If you change your whole calendar, you're starting at 0 point.
And you think of the way Figu does it is. The way they do their democracy is it's all or nothing, right? We're not going to change the way we're doing things unless everybody agrees to that change.
Wow.
Now imagine getting everybody voting for the same guy.
That would be hard here. One of the things I was trying to wrap my mind around, and I fired an email off to Switzerland, to Marianne Eulinger Mondrian, about was the Wii form, the idea of a Wii form. And it's
you mean the Nintendo Wii?
No. A Wii form like, for example, Arahat Athrasata, which is one of the spiritual planes, is considered a Wii form. And like we here on the Earth are not completely telepathic by any means, but there is a collective subconscious on the Earth. And you can see that function sometimes when someone will invent something and then a week or two later someone on the other side of the Earth will invent the exact same thing. So, and that's part of this essential oneness of all things. When I was talking about the notion of love, true wisdom conditioned love. So there is this idea of the we form, and I think what you're talking about there wouldn't have happened unless the Plejaren already were a true we form. They had telepathic contact among each other.
Do you think that because most of us are in an extreme state of mental anguish, that telepathy and the means of telepathy have it's almost like a protective mechanism, that our evolution or whatnot doesn't allow us to pass through these barriers, because just imagine.
Did you say that most of us were in extreme state of what?
I don't know. Let's replay. Mental. I'm just going to call it mental degeneracy of some sort. Anguish.
Like
yes.
anguish. That's very interesting. You know, I think there's a lot of truth to that. That, like most people on the Earth, and we all fall into it at times, go into this mental anguish, and that would be, and what you're trying to say is that would be horrible with telepathy, right?
Oh yeah, like I could feel already, like since you, Eve, myself, and maybe guest 851 in the room are already working consciously at this. I was explaining how I'm able to now differentiate when I'm picking up on certain people's vibrational or unconscious feelings. How they hit me because I've been working at it, right?
Wow.
Now imagine being unable to shut this down, or it's a stressor for me in my life, right? So and here's something I'd like to also share. This idea of what I mean by mental anguish. Most people don't think they're in charge of what they think or how they feel.
Right.
So imagine you watching somebody walking down the street and you see their arms swinging wildly, and maybe their leg would kick out and their head would nod and bob crazy like. You'd think that person was nuts, right? Well, for the majority of the people on the planet, this is what's going on inside their head. They don't know how to shut it off. It's just going and going and going.
Wow. That's crazy.
So,
and I've gotten better over the past few years, but I know that I've been the same way for too long. And those meditative sentences are so helpful, the ones I quoted earlier, to kind of snap you back. Everything is achievable for me, and I master whatever I accomplish. I've been working at repeating that. Everything is achievable for me. I master whatever I accomplish. And if you say it, usually 3 times is enough to kind of help a little bit. But if you say those for 5 minutes, it can change your whole frame of reference when you sink into that, the place where your thinking shouldn't go. Are you still working on those at all?
Absolutely. And number 10, within me exists neither anxiety nor fear. Since you were mentioning anxiety earlier, just think of when anxiety or fear hits you and you're just like, wait a second, what am I dealing with here? I'm not dealing with the moment, the present. I'm not dealing with the peace that's inside myself. I've now given away my power to this judgment of what I think is objective or outside of me. So let me just bring it back. Within me exists neither anxiety nor fear.
Read one. I love that one. I use that one. Read one of the other ones.
That's the one I have off the top of my head.
You don't have the paper in front of you either. Okay, no, I don't have the paper. I should have. I should have gotten those notes out.
But Eve is saying in the chat room, she's been feeling other feelings and emotions her whole life, and I think this is true for most people. But they are unable to differentiate other people's feelings and other people's emotional state with their own. So they illogically take it on as their own. When you walk into someone's presence and you feel, all chipper and good, or the best way I like to describe this is they teach you when you're around a stray dog that if it's coming up to you, don't show fear. Because if you show fear, it picks up on your fear and it will either attack you or run away. And this is you sending out vibrations. This is the dog picking it up and you controlling the dog essentially.
One of the beautiful things about animals, and I have too many animals. I didn't plan it this way. I have 6 cats now and 2 dogs, and the cats are in the garage, so that's a good thing. The dogs we're not quite there yet with, and for some reason I've attracted the neighbor's cat. I'm not sure how that happened, so he hangs out with us sometimes too. But what's beautiful about particularly the cats and the dogs too is they don't have anxiety. I mean, they have to really be tormented to have anxiety. They are in a natural state of under the law of harmony. That is their. So when you connect with them, it's like you're trading back and forth these positive vibrations. It becomes very supportive. Now, 2 of the cats, the females, that are the quote-unquote kittens that are about a year old, so they're not really kittens, they get real stirred up sometimes around me, and they kind of go crazy with affection, and to the point it's like almost annoying. So you can get they get over positive, I'll say that. But generally speaking, animals have this warmth about them. And I said at the beginning of the show that love is the everlasting warmth which comes from the center of creation, and that every tiny plant and every tiny animal fulfills its purpose in love. And one of the challenges that we have as a higher evolved creature is that we can turn away from the love of creation. And it's much better if you don't do that. It's much
true.
Better. Go ahead.
And I think this might be because we're talking a lot about adjusting our thinking and our thought process, and there are tools like the 77 meditation sentences, but there are also other tools that we use to balance our psyche and bring us back to a state of neutral positive thinking. And in the book The Psyche, just so happens there are 3 golden rules that are talked about, and then there are 10 recommendations. And I think this, just coming back to this oftentimes because we forget, until this becomes second nature, just like the 77 meditation sentences, until it becomes second nature to us, it is very important that we practice, And I'm talking about second nature as in how effortless it has become to take the next breath. And most of the time you don't even realize you're taking the next breath, right? That's what I mean by effortless. And then when you get in a state of stress or anything like this, you don't even notice it because your mind is instantly balancing itself because it's you're already at that point. 3 golden rules for helping balancing the psyche and your thinking is positive. How does one think positively? One would go into a wishful dream, and this is like a daydream, building a castle in the sky, being on a starship floating through space or whatever your fancy, and it doesn't even have to be real. It's just almost something like a kid would do, they're flying around as Superman or Wonder Woman or whatever. And then with that, one of the next golden rules is to smile. Just keep a smile on your face. Whatever, it just helps remind you that just over the horizon is where that smile is going to be, if things are going bad, and with that, other people, the next thing would be looking people in the eye. When you meet someone or you greet someone, take them in 100%. Accept them for who they are. Without judgment. Look them in the eye. And this also keeps you from being shy or afraid or being judged or insecure or, helping you balance your undoubted inferiority complex, which I think everybody has to some degree. I wish I was a little taller. I wish I was a little younger.
Yeah.
I wish I was,
There's flaws.
And
we're not perfect. Sometimes we focus on our flaws a little too much. I don't think we should focus on our flaws.
Yeah, especially if it's so trite, meaningless, and trivial. Now, if there's something you could do about it, if your flaw is becoming a detriment, maybe your knees are hurting, but they're hurting because you're sitting too much. Well, get up and walk around.
Yeah.
So, the 10 recommendations are really other parts you can work on to help balance your psyche. And the first one is you don't want to stay behind four walls, so you need to get outside as much as possible and spend some time outdoors and breathe the fresh air and take long walks in the forest if you have them. Okay. To me, I drive out to a place called Peters Canyon and I walk there and I take my kid and stuff, and that's always fun.
That's good.
And the second one of this is during those long walks, if you're not afraid of other people judging you as crazy, yell out somebody's name. Call out somebody's name. I use the word hitch.
Hitch?
I don't know. I always thought like a superhero or someone, their name would be Hitch. And maybe I got it from Christopher Hitchens, who was one of the leading atheists and stuff. But he had some really good things that he came up with. And also, if you don't want to yell out people's names, that's good. But basically, the yelling out of names helps shake loose some of the things that, think about a pipe being banged because there's too much crud in it. So you have to bang the pipe to kind of loosen up the junk inside. So this was what yelling will help you do. And of course, living in the city, I can't really do that without being crazy or something. But if you're alone in the forest or with a couple of friends, it's fun to do anyways.
One of the other things is to try to go barefooted, which I try to do. Yeah. You have to be careful where you are.
Yeah, pine cones?
Yeah, be careful. In certain places you don't want to go barefooted. Okay. But in certain places you can.
I got a funny story about that. My kid, when we were walking in this Peters Canyon, she likes to go barefoot. She wants to go barefoot. And I have nothing to say against it. I'm like, okay, go ahead. Just make sure you're following rule number 3. I think with her is focus. Rule number 2 is pay attention. So make sure you follow 2 and 3, right? And she's walking barefoot up this hill. She's only 5, and this lady comes down and she starts telling me, oh well, she shouldn't be walking barefoot and and she's getting really violent with me. Like I never met this lady, I never saw her, and like it's such an injustice to have my kid walking barefoot. I'm just like, what? So, and my friend was actually with me. He's like, wow, that's weird.
That is strange.
Like somehow her happiness hinged on my kid having shoes on her feet. Yes. So when walking, also another one of the things they suggest is to sing a happy song. My song, I don't even know who sings it, but it's ooh ee ooh ah ting tang wada wada bing bang. I like to sing that a lot.
Okay, everyone has their own favorite. No problem. No problem.
Do you have a favorite song?
I have not really. You know, I was, when we would go on walks, doing part of my walk barefoot. Now, lately I've just been focused on being barefoot around the house here. But and I just slipped on some socks. Sometimes my feet get a little cold. But yeah, I haven't really got to the point of singing too much. And or yelling. I haven't done the singing and the yelling part, but you know, I think there's a place for it.
You got a small community over there.
No, I mean, I could get away with it. It's okay.
Okay. So yeah, and when you do walk, do you ever run? Or you just always are walking? You ever try to run barefoot?
Does he recommend running sometimes?
Yeah, we'll alternate. Yeah, definitely.
Huh.
And that's what it says to kind of do. It's recommendation number 4.
What I would do sometimes is carry shoes, you know, because certain parts you just don't want to walk barefoot. At least my feet aren't tough enough. So I would carry shoes and then put my shoes on real quick and walk on certain areas and then take them off. It's kind of a hassle, but I'm glad you reminded me of those things. It's so important to do this stuff. It really is.
It's very simple. All this stuff that doesn't cost you any money, it would just cost you a little bit of time for the most part. And people can, at least they can call you a crazy cult member now because you're walking without shoes, yelling in the forest. But two other things that are, I think, important here is allow time to rest when you go on a walk. And also,
let me interrupt you. I'm sorry. That I have started doing. There's a place that I like to stop at. The dogs don't like to stop. My wife doesn't like to stop, but it's on this little outlook. It's up on a hill. There's a picnic table there, and you can overlook the lake. It's really beautiful. I love to stop there and just sit and take it in. That is a great thing to do. Now, I get some pushback because I seem to be the only one that can really enjoy it, but yeah, I'd love to sit there, and you need to do that. I think that's an important thing to do.
Absolutely. And are your dogs well enough behaved where you can let them off the leash right there and they can run around while you sit?
One of them yes, one of them no. So that means both of them stay on the leash. Now we have the long retractable leashes, so they can go out 30 feet or so. But the one I will not. No, he'll be gone. He'll be 500 yards away, and it'll be not good. But yeah.
And I know you do this next thing. This next thing is you're observing nature. You're listening to the sounds and other things. I've often heard you say it.
Actually, what you're inspiring me to do is I want to go. We did a walk this morning, but I'm kind of in the mood to do another one now. I think this is great. And
number 7 says, reflect over your deeds and your speeches and your thoughts, and look at yourself and try to look at yourself with really honest eyes. Like, should I have said that? Should I have done that? Or so next time it comes about. And I guess the next one is secrets entrusted in confidence, and this has nothing really to do with the walk, but this says if someone entrusts you with knowledge or a secret, and they say don't tell anybody, then you shouldn't go about blabbermouthing. And here's the thing. We were talking a little bit earlier about politics in the workplace and stuff. Sometimes people will tell me things, but I don't consider them anything but something to have humor with. So Like for example, a lady I work with says, the new boss came into my office and he started counting the tiles. He says, "Wow, you have 1.5 more tiles than I do. Your room's bigger than mine." And I just thought that was funny. So I had mentioned that to him when we were going for a meeting in her room. I said, "Hey, isn't this room bigger than yours?" Because I thought it would be funny. And then she put me, "You can't say that." And I'm like, "Oh, you didn't tell me it was a secret."
So did that piss someone off?
Oh, yeah. So I have to think about, like, okay, because I don't have a lot of those. If you tell me something's a secret, I don't tell anybody. But I don't have that. I don't think I haven't developed that, big secretiveness, because oftentimes with secrets comes, hidden aggression and hidden anxiety and people really are thinking about other people, but they'll just tell you in secret. But nothing will get resolved and whatnot. But like I said, if someone tells me it's a secret, I won't spew it all over the place.
I'm really glad you reminded me of those things in the book of the Psyche, ways to kind of get rid of the negative energy, I guess, and restore that neutral positive balance. I needed that. So I'm going to have to figure out, I used to have slip-on shoes that I could wear and then pull them off. So I'm going to have to figure out how to get myself some good slip-ons again for my walks. And actually, I feel like taking a second walk today. You've inspired me, Nate.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the same thing.
Okay. So we are over the hour, folks. I appreciate everyone that will listen to this archive, and I appreciate the folks that came today. Pull out the Meyer material and listen and study this stuff. I'm sure you'll find it helpful. You've been listening to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. Have a good day.